Minute Math. When you need help, you use Minute Math.
Hi, I'm Sean Gannon, and this is Minute Math. And today we're going to learn about one-step equations, and we're going to solve each equation. So, if I was given this equation, 26 equals 8 plus v. Well, I first need to see how can I get the letter v by itself. And there's addition between the 8 and the v, and more importantly, a positive 8 that's going on right there, positive 8. Now, you can see it more clearly if I move it to be 26 equals v plus 8, and that might be easier to see. You normally don't have to do that, but I use the commutative property to rearrange v and 8. I'm allowed to do that because just the commutative property says I'm allowed to. So now I just have to subtract an 8 to both sides, minus 8. So I take that v plus the 8 there, opposite of addition is subtraction. So I'm subtracting an 8, that becomes a 0, cancels out. I have the v I bring down here. Now I'm left with 26 minus 8. Well, that comes out to be 18. And so my final answer here, the plus 0 I don't need, is v equals 18. And there we go. 3 plus p equals 8. Okay? So if I have 3 plus p equals 8, I need to get p by itself. And to do that, I see that there's a 3 here, right? A plus 3. Now, that 3 is a positive 3. So what's important here is I want to subtract a 3 to both sides. Opposite of that, addition. Okay? Now, if I subtract a 3 to both sides, whoops, there we go. That 3 will cancel. I have a 0 plus p. And 8 minus 3 comes out to be 5. And so we don't need the 0 there, and we're left with just p equals 5 as our final answer. 15 plus b equals 23. Well, I have 15 plus b equals 23, and I need to get the letter b by itself. Well, to do that, I need to bring the 15 over to the right-hand side. Well, how do I do that? Well, there's a plus 15, it's a positive 15, and I'm adding these two numbers together. Okay? If we use the commutative property, I could rearrange this to be b plus 15, positive 15, right, equals 23. That makes it a little easier to see that all I have to do is subtract a 15 to both sides, opposite of addition. Subtract a 15, subtract a 15, and so now we're left with, well, b just comes down, 15 minus 15 is 0, and now I have 23 minus 15. Well, how do I solve that? Let's use the traditional method. The 3 minus 5 can't do that. 2 becomes a 1, 13. Now I'm left with 13 minus 5. 13 minus 5 comes out to be an 8. And now 1 minus 1 is 0. And so now we're left with a final answer here of 8. Well, b plus 0 equals 8. Don't need to add 0. So now we're left with b equals 8 as our final answer. 15 plus the letter n equals a negative 9. Well, way I can do this, right, I have to get n by itself. And this is a one-step equation. Well, I have a negative 15. Opposite of addition is subtraction, right? And the opposite of subtraction is addition. So if I have a negative 15, to get rid of that, I have to add a 15 to both sides. Now this gets tricky. We have a negative 9 plus a positive 15. Well, let's deal with that in a second. Negative 15 plus 15, we know cancels out, becomes 0 plus n. But that negative 9 plus 15. So when I have a trouble, when I'm struggling with negative 9 plus 15, and negative adding a positive, right, I look at the number line. So if I have a 0 here, and we start with negative 9, I know, I have to move from negative 9 up 15 units. Well, 9 units, right, plus 9 units gets me to 0. So now I have to get a total of 15. If I have another 6 units, plus 6 units, that gets me a grand total of plus 15, right? Because 9 plus 6 is 15. And that helps me see that negative 9 plus 15 units gets me to a positive 6. So now we have 0 plus n equals 6. That's easy. Well, we don't really care about the 0, right? We can't add 0 to anything. It doesn't change it. So we're left with n equals 6 as our final answer. Plus 4 equals a negative 12. Well, this is a pretty simple one step. I have n plus 4 equals negative 12. Opposite of adding a 4 is subtracting, right? Subtracting a 4, minus 4. So we subtract a 4 to both sides. So plus 4 minus 4 comes out to be 0, so we have a 0 here, the m there. But now we have negative 12 minus 4. Sometimes, subtraction is the same thing as adding a negative, right? And you can kind of see that there. So negative 12 plus a negative 4 makes it more negative, which is a negative 16. Okay? So now we have m plus 0 equals negative 16. Well, don't need to add 0. So we have m equals negative 16 as our final answer. X minus 7 equals 13. We make a better looking 7, and it's good enough. So we have x minus 7 equals 13. Well, I have minus a 7. The opposite of subtracting a 7 is adding a 7. So I'm going to do that one step to both sides. So we add a 7 to both sides. And so the negative 7, right, or minus 7 plus 7, that cancels out. We're left with x plus 0 here. And it could be minus 0, right, because it's the same thing. You're subtracting a 0, adding a 0, same stuff. But now we have 13 plus 7. 13 plus 7 is 20. So now we have x plus 0 equals 20. Well, we don't need to write the add 0, so now we have x equals 20. And that's our final answer. M minus 9 equals a negative 13. Well, there we go. So I have m minus 9 equals negative 13. Well, opposite of that subtracting a 9 is adding a 9. So I'm going to choose to do that for both sides, that operation. What I do to one side of the equation, I got to be equal, do it to the other side of the equation. Well, I have minus 9 plus 9 becomes 0, so we have m plus 0 here. Now we have negative 13 plus 9. So how can we think about this? Well, let's look at our number line here. And that might help us. We have 0 here, and I'm going to put negative 13 here. Excuse me. So I have to go 9 units, right? So if you're quick in your head, you can get the final answer, but we're going to take our time. Let's go move 9 units. So we have one unit was negative 12, and then one more is negative 11, and then one more is negative 10. So we've already done 3 units here. So we've added 3, right? Added 3 to 10 to get to 10. So we need 6 more to get to add a total of 9. So if I add 6 more units, right, going to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, what does that get me to? Well, negative 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, right? Negative 4. Adding that 6 there to give me an overall total of that plus 9. Okay? So sometimes using the number line is a great technique to kind of visualize. I'm a visual learner, so I like to do that. But that gets me to a negative 4 as the negative 13 plus 9. Okay? Well, we added 0, don't really need that, so our final answer here is m equals negative 4. P minus 6 equals negative 5. Well, if I was given p minus 6 equals negative 5, my one step would just be to add 6 to both sides. That's opposite of that subtraction. So I'm adding a 6. Great. Minus 6 plus 6 becomes 0, so we have p plus 0 here. And now I have negative 5 plus 6. Now, the quick brain would say it's just going to be a positive 1. But let's use a number line to see that. We have negative 5 here, put 0. So if I have negative 5 and I add 5 units to that plus 5, that gets me to 0. And I have to add 1 more unit to get to a total of 6 that I'm adding together, right? So adding 1 more unit gets me to a positive 1, which is my final answer. So I have p plus 0 equals 1. Don't need the 0, so I can rewrite that to be p equals 1 as my final answer. V minus 15 equals negative 27. Okay? Well, that minus 15, I gotta think, what's the opposite of subtraction? And that's addition. So I'm gonna add a 15 to both sides. Okay? This becomes tricky, right? I have a negative 15 plus 15, that cancels out. That's v plus 0, don't really need that. But negative 27 should be plus 15. And here's a technique you can try. Okay? So in reality, I have, well, negative 27, a little side note here, negative 27 plus 15. Well, if I pull out a negative 1 from this, I'm left with a positive 27 minus 15, all times negative 1. And if you watch our other videos on distributive property, I know I can distribute that negative 1 back in, and I will get negative 27 plus 15. But what this allows me to do is to think about, I'm going to do it over here, what's 27 minus 15? Well, 27 minus 15, well, 7 minus 5 is 2. 2 minus 1 is 1, and we have 12. So we have negative 1. Inside here becomes 12. What's negative 1 times 12? Well, it's negative 12. And so negative 27 plus 15 comes out to be a negative 12. Well, v plus 0 equals negative 12. Don't need the 0, so now I'm left with v equals negative 12 as my final answer. N plus 16 equals 9. Well, if I had n plus 16 equals 9, my first thing I'm thinking about is, hey, that's addition. What's the opposite of that? That's subtraction. So I'm going to subtract a 16 to both sides. Well, positive 16 minus 16 is just 0, so now I'm left with n plus 0 equals, 9 minus 16. That's tricky. I'm going to look to the number line. So 0 here, I have a positive 9. Well, if I'm subtracting 16, I'm going 16 units to the left. So if I subtract, 9, that gets me to 0. Okay, so if I subtract 9, I get to 0, but I have to subtract some more to get to 16. Total subtracting 16, that'd be 7 more. So minus 7 gets me a total here at negative 7 of a total subtraction of minus 16 units. Okay, so I took 9, I subtracted 9 to get to 0. Add another minus 7, which I add together adds me 16. So I subtract 7 more to get to negative 7. Because negative 7 plus negative 9 is negative 16. So negative 7 here is what 9 minus 16 is. And now n plus 0 equals negative 7. Don't need that anymore, so I'm going to write it here on the side. Don't need the plus 0, so now I have n equals negative 7. And that is my final answer. Negative 104 equals 8x. So this is tricky. We have 8 times x there, and I need to get x by itself. So opposite of multiplication, which is going on, right? 8 times x. 8x is just 8 times x. Opposite of multiplication is division. So divide by 8. Well, that doesn't help me. What's negative 104 divided by 8? Well, let's go look at it. 8 goes into negative 104. Let's use a traditional method, long division here. 8 goes into 1, well, 0 times, can't do it. So 8 goes into 10 one time, right? 1 times 8 is 8. We subtract the 2, and don't really worry about that negative sign. I guess I didn't need to put that in there for right now. We'll worry about the negative at the end. 10 minus 8 is 2. I bring down the 4. So the 8 goes into 24 3 times, because 3 times 8 is 24. And 24 minus 24 is 0. 0, done. And so 104 divided by 8 is 13. But negative 104 divided by 8 is a negative 13 equals, well, 8 and 8 cancel. That's x. So I can rewrite this nicely. X equals negative 13 as my final answer. 14b equals a negative 56. Well, I have multiplication here, right? 14b is 14 times b. And the opposite of multiplication is division. So I need to divide by 14 on both sides. Keeping in mind here that 14 divided by 14 is just b. And then a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So my final answer has to be a negative here. So how can I divide 56 divided by 14? I don't know off the top of my head how many times 14 goes into 56, and I don't want to rush to my calculator. So let's go break down, well, what is 56? What is it really multiplied out to? It's like do that prime factorization. Well, 56, well, it's even, so 2 goes into it. How many times does 2 go into 56? Well, I can quickly do a little long division here, right? 2, in this part was easier, 2 into 56. 2 into 5 is, well, 4, right? 2. Got ahead of myself, 2. And 2 times 2 is 4, right? Subtract it. 5 minus 4 is 1. Bring down to 6. And this is easy, right? 2 goes into 16 is 8 times. 8 times 2 is 16. And we're good, right? So 28. So 2 times 28 is 56. And then, well, now that's easy, right? 28 is 2 and 14. Now, I don't need to keep doing my prime factorization fully because if I recognize there's a 14 here and there's a 14 here. So 56, right, can be rewritten as 2 times 14, and we divide by 14 right there. Well, the 14s can just cancel, right? We have the negative 2, right? So the 14s cancel, so we have b equals negative 2 times 2, which is negative 4. And now I have my final answer. Negative 6 equals b over 18. Okay, so negative 6 equals b over 18. Well, that's division here. So the opposite of division is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply an 18 to both sides. Multiply by 18. that cancels these 18s, and I'm left with b here. But really, what's 18 times a negative 6? Well, negative times a positive is going to be negative, so we know that. But how can I write 18, not 16, get ahead of myself here, 18 times 6, multiplied by 6. Well, what's 6 times 8? 6 times 8 is 48. 8 carry the 4. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 4 is 10, so we have 1 over 8. So 18 times negative 6, we know it's going to be negative, right? Negative times a positive is negative, so we have a negative 108 here. Well, let's rewrite it nicely. B first. B equals a negative 108, and that is our final answer. 10n equals 40. Well, 10n equals 40. Well, that's multiplication, right? 10 times n. Well, opposite multiplication is division, so I'm going to divide by 10 on both sides. And this one, hopefully you can see. 10's cancel, we're left with n. And now 40 divided by 10. Well, that's pretty simple. The zeros we kind of can write off here from that little technique. Get rid of the zeros. Now I have 4 divided by 1. Well, any number divided by itself is itself. So 4 divided by 1 is 4. And now I'm done. That's my final answer. V over 8 equals 2. Well, when I see V over 8, that fraction, really it's division, V divided by 8. So what's the opposite of division? Multiplication. So I need to multiply both sides by, in this case, 8. What's in the denominator? What that does is cancel the 8 out here. I'm left with a V. Now I have 2 times 8. 2 times 8 is just 16. Now we're done. We have V by itself, and it's equal to 16. 16 equals K over 11. Okay. Well, I have K over 11 here and the 16 to the left. K over 11 is K divided by 11. So, well, the opposite of division is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 11. So what that does is here on the right, it cancels out the 11. On the left, I have 11 times 16. So let's go multiply that. And remember, order doesn't matter, we multiply. 16 times 11 is the same thing as 11 times 16. So if I have 16 times 11, 1 times 6 is 6, 1 times 1 is 1. 0 place value here, it's not a 6, it's a 0. And now we have 1 times 6 is 6, 1 times 1 is 1. Let's add them together. 6 plus 0 is 6, 1 plus 6 is 7, and we have a 1 right here. All right, 1 just comes down. So now I have 176. So we have 176 equals what's left is K. Let's rewrite that K first. K equals 176. And that is our final answer. Negative 15x equals 0. Well, I have multiplication there, right? And negative 15x is just multiplied. It's negative 15 times x. So opposite of multiplication is division. So we divide both sides by negative 15. Well, negative 15's cancel, right? So we're left with a positive x. And then what's 0 divided by negative 15? Well, that kind of throws you off here for a second. Let's think about this. Divided by negative 15 is the same thing as 0 times, a little side note here, negative 1 over 15. And what's 0 times anything? 0, right? So 0 over negative 15 is just 0. So x equals 0 is my final answer. Negative 17x equals a negative 204. So negative 17x divided by, equals negative 204. Well, that's multiplication right here, right? So I got ahead of myself. Opposite multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 17. On the left-hand side, it cancels out, so we're left with just x, right? The negative 17's cancel. And what's nice is the two negatives here on the right instantly will cancel out the positive, right? Negative divided by a negative is a positive. Well, 204, can I break that down maybe into something a little easier to see, to I don't know, like what numbers go into it? Well, let's think about it here, okay? 204, let's go break it down to see if I can get something with a 17 and it might cancel out. 17 is prime, so I can't break that one down. Well, 204, simple as just 2 and 102. 102 is 2 and, what is that, 51? 51, oh. Does anything go into 51? Does anything go into 51? Does 3? 3 goes into 51, right? So 3, well 3 if you don't know, so 3 goes into 51, we go right here. 3 goes into 5, 2, 1 time. 3, you subtract them, you get 2 using the traditional method, you bring out a 1, and then 3 goes into 21. 7 times, oh, there we go, 7 times 3 is 21, 0, we're done. So 3 and 17, okay? So 3 and 17 here are at the end. So now if I multiply it out, 204, I can rewrite it to be 2 times 3 times 17, all over 17. This makes it easy, the 17 will cancel. So now we're left with 2 times 2 times 3. 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 12, and so x equals 12 is our final answer. Equals a negative 7n. So 21 equals negative 7n. Well, I see there's multiplication going on right here, right? Negative 7n is negative 7 times n. So if I divide by negative 7 to both sides, the negative 7 cancels out on the right, I'm left with just n. And what's 21 divided by negative 7? Well, 21 divided by 7 is just 3. And then negative, a positive divided by negative is just negative. So we have n equals negative 3. Well, let's rearrange it to make it look nicer. So n equals negative 3 this way. And that's my final answer. M over 4 equals negative 13. So m over 4 equals negative 13. Well, m divided by 4 is really what's going on here when I have m over 4. Opposite division, multiplication. So multiply 4 to both sides. And now I'm left with, well, the 4's cancel here, m. Now I'm left with negative 13 times 4. If you need to do the traditional method, 13 times 4 here, well, negative 13 times 4. 4 times 3 is 12, to carry the 1. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5, and we have a negative 52. So m equals negative 52 here, okay? And that's actually our final answer. We have nothing else left to do. Negative 126 equals 14k, okay? Well, negative 126 equals 14k. That 14k is just 14 times k. So opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm divided by 14 to both sides. Here's where it gets tricky. 14's cancel, I'm left with k here on the right. But I have negative 126 over 14, and I know that a negative and a negative divided by a positive is still negative. But I can't see necessarily, and long division really doesn't help in a sense here, I think, personally. And so, how can I break this down? Well, I like to see what each one, I can break down what, their prime factorization is. Well, 126, I just worry about the positive right now. 126, I know 2 goes into it, definitely. Well, 2 goes into 126 63 times. Well, 63 times, right? Is that right? Yeah, 6 and 3. Okay, 63. Well, doesn't 7 go into 63 too? 7? 7 goes into 63 9 times, right? 7 times 9 is 63. And I'm actually going to stop here. Why am I going to stop there? Well, I know 2 times 7 is at 14. So I know if I rewrote this out, the negative 126, I could rewrite to be negative 2 times 7 times 9 over 14. Well, 2 times 7 is just 14, right? So if 2 times 7 is 14, I can cancel these out right here. Okay, now if you don't, trust me, 14 is just 2 times 7, and you can see that right there, cancel it out. So 2 times 7 is canceled to the 14, so now I'm left with that negative, don't forget the negative that's there, negative 9. So negative 9 equals k. I can rewrite that nice and cleaner with k first. K equals negative 9. That is our final answer. So negative 143 equals negative 11x. Well, how can I solve that? Well, I see there's negative 11x right here. That's multiplication. Opposite multiplication is division. So divide both sides by negative 11. Well, 2 negatives cancel. A negative divided by negative is a positive, so I can cancel that out here. And these negative 11s cancel, so I'm left with just x. What was 11 into 143? Well, let's use long division. 11 into 143. 11 and 14 one time. 1 times 11 is 11. Subtract them. 4 minus 1 is 3. 1 minus 1, right? 14 minus 11 is 3. bring down the 3, and now it's pretty simple. 11 goes into 33 3 times. 3 times 11 is 33. They cancel 33, minus 33 is 0. Now we're done. So 143 divided by 11 is just 13. Well, 13 equals x. Let's rearrange it, x first. X equals 13. That is my final answer. Negative 16 plus x equals a negative 15. Well, I have addition going on here, right? But that's a little tricky because what I have here is that negative 16, right? How do I get rid of that negative 16? Well, maybe if I rearrange this, maybe that's a little easier to see. So I have x first plus a negative 16 equals a negative 15. Now that might be easier to see. So adding a negative is the same thing as subtraction. X minus 16 equals negative 15. Now we can see it, right? Adding a negative is the same thing as minus. So if I add a 16 to both sides, that's opposite of that subtraction. Now, you don't have to do all these steps, all right? A lot of people can recognize it from the beginning, but I wanted to write it out so you can see. So we have x equals, well, negative 15 plus 16. We know that's going to be a positive 1. Why? Look at the number line here, right? We start with negative 15. Negative 15, we add 15 units to that. To the right, we get to 0. One more unit plus 1 gets me to 16, right? So an overall distance of plus 16. So we ended at 1, positive 1. So our final answer is x equals 1. Negative 5 equals a over, that's an a. My a's don't look 9s. A over 18. Okay? Well, I see a, that weird looking a, over 18. That's division. Opposite division, multiplication. Multiply 18 to both sides. Now I know a positive times a negative is going to be negative. Keep that in my mind here. 18's cancel. I'm left with a. That's an even weird looking a. On the right here. Well, what's 18 times 5? Well, 18 times 5, let's go negative 5. All right. 8 times 5 is 40. 0, carry the 4. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 4 is 9. We know it's negative. A positive times a negative is a negative. So we have a negative 90 here. Tricky. Of course, they had a's and 9's together. Well, let's rearrange the a first. So we have a equals a negative 90. And that is my final answer. Negative 17 equals x minus 15. Well, pretty simple so far. I have a minus 15. I need to get x by itself. Opposite of subtraction is addition. So I'm just going to add a 15 to both sides. Well, right now I can see it's going to be negative 2. But some of you might be struggling with that. So let me kind of show you something that might help you out here. If I have a negative 17, little note here, little trick I like to do, plus 15, until you have it down. Well, negative 17 plus 15, I can pull out a negative 1 from that. I pull out a negative 1 from this, I have a positive 17, and then I actually have, well, if I pull out a negative from this, that just becomes, so positive 15 becomes a negative 15, so minus 15. Well, now this becomes pretty simple to solve. 17 minus 15 is 2, right? So negative 1 times 2, and what's negative 1 times 2? Well, negative 2. And so that would be my answer here. Negative 17 plus 15, right? It is really just negative 2. These cancel, we're left with just x, right? We don't really need those, right? Negative 15 plus 15, they cancel out. It's just plus 0, but it's just x now. So let's rearrange it, put x first. So x equals negative 2. And that is my nice, neat final answer. N minus 8 equals negative 10. Okay? Well, this minus 8, the opposite of subtraction is addition. So the first step here is to add 8. So I'm going to add an 8 to both sides. Well, I have n equals, well, negative 10 plus 8. That one's a little tricky, okay? I have a few different ways of doing this, okay? But I know that negative 10, right, negative 10 is larger in the negative than 8 is the positive. So my final answer is going to be negative. Well, they're 2 apart. It's going to be a negative 2. But let's go see what it looks like here. Another way of seeing it. I have negative 10 plus 8, okay? Well, negative 10 plus 8, if I pull out a negative 1 from that, negative 1, pull out from a negative 10 becomes a positive 10. Plus, if we pull out a negative 1 from the 8, it's a negative 8 now. So notice if I multiply it back in, I get my same original. If I distribute the negative 1 back in, I'll get my original answer up there. Now it's a little easier. plus a negative 8 is the same thing as minus 8. What's 10 minus 8? It's 2. Negative 1 on the outside. What's negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. And so that's how I got to that negative 2 there. My final answer. V over 7 equals 8. Well, V over 7 is just division. Opposite of division is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 7, and this becomes a fairly simple problem. The 7's cancel. I'm looking at the V on the left here, and what's 8 times 7? 56. So I have 56 here. And that's it. I have V equals 56, and that's my final answer. A plus 11 equals 20. Well, if A plus 11 equals 20, I have addition here. I need to get A by itself. Opposite addition, subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 11 to both sides. Well, the 11's cancel, right? That becomes 0. Well, it's right here. A plus 0 equals, well, what's 20 minus 11? That's just 9, right? So you need to do the traditional method. 0 can't go into 1, so we 1 here, 10. 10 minus 1 is 9. Okay, 1 minus 1, boom, 9. Okay, 0, boom. So A plus 0 equals 9. Don't need a 0, so I have A equals 9 here, right? And that's my final answer. And that's an A, and that's a 9 here. Okay? If we don't add it by 0, we don't really need it. It's the additive identity. It doesn't change the problem. Negative 7 plus M equal to 8. So negative 7 plus M equals 8. Well, I see there's that negative 7 out there. And I know opposite of that negative 7 is adding a 7 to both sides. I could have rearranged it, and I've done that in other videos. But this one I'm not going to. That negative 7, all I have to do is add a 7. I know that's going to cancel out that negative 7. Add a 7 to both sides, okay? Well, adding a 7 here cancels that out, and I'm left with just an M, right? Negative 7 plus 7 is 0. I just have an M there. And what's 8 plus 7? Well, 8 plus 7 is 15. And now I'm done. That is my final answer, okay? So if you needed more in-depth, there's other videos I have that have that here, that have a little more in-depth on how you can rearrange this and really see what's going on. But this one, I'm not going to do that. 18 plus M equals 8. So 18 plus M equals 8. Well, that's addition right here, right? Adding 18. So I'm just subtracting 18 at both sides. Opposite of that, positive 18, right? So I'm left with the M here, but now I have 8 minus 18. What's that? Let's use a number line. It's the trick I like to use. So if I have 0 here and an 8 here, okay? And I need to subtract 18 units. Well, if I subtract 8, I'm going to the left here, right, little arrow. Negative 8, subtracting 8, well, that gets me to 0, and I need 10 more to get to 18, right? Minus 10 gets me a total of a minus 18 here, okay? Well, subtract another 10 gets me to negative 10. So 8 minus 18 is really 8 minus 8 minus 10. Well, 8 minus 8 is 0, minus 10 is negative 10. So M equals negative 10 is my final answer.
Minute Math. When you need help, you use Minute Math. Minute Math. Minute Math. When you need help, you use Minute Math. MinuteMathTutor.com.